After buying an old car and rebuilding it, a young nerd is possessed by it, and now his car decides to go after all those who mistreated him, revealing itself to be a monstrous vehicle. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Christine, from 1983. In a car factory in the 1950s, a line of Plymouth Fury model cars is being finished. However, one of them is special, a red model, which is being inspected by one of the workers. To his misfortune, while checking the engine, the hood door closes by itself and crushes his hand. While he goes to tend to the wound, another employee inspects the car from the inside and drops ashes from his cigar on the seat. Hours pass and work at the factory comes to an end. Everyone is leaving, but the supervisor notices that the red car has its lights on and goes to check, but finds the body of the employee with the cigar. Decades later, in 1978, a student called Dennis arrives with his car at the house of Arnie, a nerdy and clumsy young man. Despite their different personalities, the two become great friends and make their way to the first day of school. There, they collect the materials in their lockers until the new student, Lee, appears and attracts everyone's attention with her beauty. Later, Dennis is waiting for Arnie for lunch, but discovers that his friend is being harassed by Buddy, the class bully. When he hears about this, he runs into the school workshop, just as Buddy has taken Arnie's lunch, and threatens him with a knife. Dennis tries to intervene, but the bully throws the lunch on the floor and makes Arnie slip on it. The fall leads to Arnie losing his glasses and, not satisfied with that, Buddy smashes them with his foot. The bully laughs at the whole situation, but Dennis takes advantage of his distraction and disarms him with a blow, followed by a punch right in the face. At the same moment, the rest of the gang attacks Dennis, only for one of the teachers to arrive at the workshop and tell them to stop. He soon becomes suspicious of Buddy, and Arnie confirms that he threatened them with a knife, but Buddy denies everything. The teacher forces the bully to empty his pockets and then he shows him the penknife he was hiding. As a result, he and his henchmen are sent to the office. Buddy ends up being expelled from school, while his friends are sent to detention. At the end of the day, Dennis and Arnie talk about what happened, until, on the way, the young nerd sees a car in front of a house and tells Dennis to stop. They go there and find a red Plymouth Fury model car, the same one from the factory incident, but which is completely old and badly looked after. Arnie doesn't mind and becomes obsessed with the car, until its owner, old George LeBay, turns up. He says that the car is called Christine and that it belonged to his brother, who perished a few weeks ago. Because of this, the old man wants to get rid of the car as soon as possible and offers it for $250. Dennis advises his friend not to buy such a wrecked car, but Arnie closes the deal without hesitation. When evening comes, the young man returns home and tells his parents about his purchase, but his strict mother is totally against the idea and tells him to get rid of the car. The young man refuses, as he already does enough to please his parents and bought the car with his own savings. Even so, his mother remains adamant in her decision, prompting the young man to leave the house and take the car to a garage with Dennis. There, they are met by the owner of the mechanics, a grumpy old man called Will, who treats the two youngsters rudely. Despite this, he lets the young men keep the car overnight, but then tells them to go home. On the way back, Dennis asks why Arnie bought a car that's as crumbled as Christine. The young man replies that he's finally found something as ugly as himself, but that it can become something better if he puts his mind to it. Weeks go by and Arnie works day and night to fix the car. The owner of the garage continues to be rude, but he decides to hire the young man to help him in the garage, and in exchange, Arnie will be able to pick up all the scrap metal he needs for his car. The young man accepts the offer and continues working on the car, without realizing that, in a mysterious way, he is becoming more and more attached to Christine. The next day, Dennis and two other friends talk about the new student and he is challenged to go and talk to her in the library. The young man accepts the challenge, but when he sits down at Lee's table and asks her out, the girl tells him she already has a date. Dennis leaves the table embarrassed by the rejection and, at the end of the day, goes to Arnie's house to talk, as they haven't been seeing each other as often. But when he gets there, Arnie is different, without his glasses, with more stylish clothes and a rebellious temper. He doesn't even want to talk to his friend and promptly leaves to go do some extra work for the shop owner. His mother tries to stop him, but the young man just ignores her and goes on his way. She then talks to Dennis and says she's worried about her son and his new car, as she's discovered that the previous owner took his own life inside the car by inhaling carbon monoxide. On hearing this, Dennis goes to old George's house and he reveals what happened to his brother. The guy says that when he bought Christine, his brother became obsessed with the car, even after his daughter and wife lost their lives in it. To make matters worse, after his brother perished, the car mysteriously turned up at George's house weeks later. This makes Dennis even more worried and, at the end of the day, he decides to go to the garage to have a look at the car. When he gets there, he tries to get into the car, but as soon as he pulls the handle, the radio starts playing and Dennis runs off before anyone sees him. The next morning, the young man goes to the school stadium to play a football match. Dennis is preparing for an important move, but in the distance, he sees Arnie arriving with Christine, fully restored, which attracts the attention of Buddy and his friends. In addition, Lee appears from inside the car and she and Arnie kiss in front of everyone. Dennis is confused and upset when he sees this and loses concentration on the game. Unfortunately, one of the rival players takes advantage of this and takes the ball from him with a blow so strong that it knocks him unconscious and seriously injures him. Days pass after this incident and Dennis wakes up in hospital with his leg in a cast and his neck fractured. At his side is Arnie, who has come to check on his friend, and the two resume their old friendship. Dennis reveals that, because of what happened at the match, he'll never be able to play football again and that he almost became a paraplegic. He also asks how Arnie managed to fix Christine in such a short space of time, but his friend just says that he worked hard to do it. The conversation, however, soon changes tone and Arnie tells him that he made his parents register the car in his name, otherwise he would drop out of school. Dennis notices that his friend has changed his personality a lot and something bad seems to be growing inside him. Even so, Arnie just says goodbye to Dennis and, when evening comes, he drives Lee to a drive-in movie theater. The two of them are having a romantic moment, but when everything starts to escalate, Lee backs off and gets out of the car. Arnie goes after her and the girl says she doesn't want to spend those moments in the car. What's more, the two start arguing about the fact that the young man is obsessed with Christine and pays more attention to her than to his own girlfriend. He finds this conversation absurd and convinces Lee to get in the car because of the rain. The girl agrees, but as soon as they get in, the windshield starts to malfunction and Arnie goes out to try to fix it. Just then, Lee grabs a snack to eat and the car turns on the radio by itself. If that wasn't strange enough, a strong light is emitted from the dashboard and the girl starts to feel sick, as if she's choking. She starts to run out of air and Arnie immediately runs to help her, but the car acts on its own again and locks the doors from the inside. The young man despairs and tries to open the door any way he can, but to no avail. Luckily, Lee, already out of breath, manages to pull the lock on the door and a driver standing next to her manages to open it. When he sees this, Arnie goes into a rage and attacks the guy, but the man just wants to help get the food stuck in the girl's throat out, and he succeeds. After this bizarre situation, Arnie takes Lee back home, but the girl quickly gets out of the car and doesn't want to talk. Even so, he tries to apologize, but Lee says that somehow it was the car that did this to her. Not only that, she feels that Christine seems to be jealous of Arnie, as something strange always happens when the two of them are together. Again, the young man thinks it's all paranoia on his girlfriend's part and promises that they'll talk it over the next day. Arnie then goes back to the car, only he can't start it. Instinctively, the young man tries to talk to Christine and tells her that what happened to Lee won't change anything and that she will continue to be his car. After that, he tries to start it again and this time the car works again. The two then return to the garage and Arnie leaves Christine there, but before he knows it, Buddy and his henchmen sneak into the place. After the young man leaves, the thugs go to Christine and, armed with sledgehammers, they begin to destroy the entire car. Not content with destroying the bodywork, one of the thugs starts tearing up the seats and destroys the radio. The next day, Arnie and Lee reconcile and go together to the garage so that the young man can get his wallet from the car. However, when they get there, Arnie is shocked to see Christine completely destroyed. Lee asks who did it and tries to support her boyfriend, but Arnie can't control his anger and forces her to leave. Later, during dinner, the young man tells his parents about what happened and they try to comfort him, saying that they're going to help him buy a new car. However, this only makes Arnie even angrier, because he knows that his parents, like Lee, never liked Christine. What's more, he blames them for what happened, because if they had let him park his car in the garage, none of this would have happened. After saying a lot of rude things to his parents, Arnie leaves the table and goes to his room, but his father goes to him and tells him to apologize to his mother. The young man continues his rebellious behavior, which forces his father to take physical action, only for Arnie to strike back and almost take his father's life. Hours pass and the young man is still obsessed with Christine. He returns to the workshop and decides to repair her, piece by piece, until she is exactly as she was before. However, he is surprised to see that the car, in a supernatural way, repairs its engine by itself. Intrigued, Arnie asks Christine to show him what else she can do and then the car begins to restore itself completely, without any effort. Later, in the middle of the road, one of Buddy's henchmen, called Moochie, hitches a ride in a truck and stops in front of a highway. The young man continues on his way until he hears the sound of a car engine in the distance. As he gets closer, he meets Christine, who pulls into the road and stops in front of the guy. Frightened, he suspects that Arnie is inside and tries to justify what he's done, but the car turns on its headlights and speeds off towards him. Mucci runs as fast as he can and manages to jump off a jam just before the car hits him. He thinks he's lost the vehicle, but Christine appears soon afterwards and gives chase. The young man continues to run away and jumps out of a gate that leads to an old warehouse. After that, he runs down a narrow path, but right behind him appears Christine, who chases him leisurely, almost as if she's having fun with the whole thing. Finally, the young man finds himself trapped without exit, with the car right in front of him, just waiting. With nowhere to go, he pulls out his pocket knife and threatens whoever is driving, but Christine starts to advance and, even though the alley is too narrow, she forces her way through and crushes the young man. The next morning, Arnie goes to Dennis' room and tells him what happened to Mucci. Dennis finds this suspicious and finds it even stranger that Christine is restored after being torn to pieces. However, Arnie just shrugs it off and leaves. On the way out, the young man is approached by Detective Jenkins, who says he's investigating who destroyed his car, as well as the perishment of Mucci, who was found with his body split in half. Arnie says he doesn't know about the young man's elimination, although he is pleased with the news. The detective begins to suspect the young man and reveals that he has heard his girlfriend Lee's testimony about what happened to the car and how, strangely, it was restored. This is the last straw for the young man, who loses patience and leaves without reporting anything else. Later, he calls Lee and tries to convince her to meet him, but the girl refuses, which only makes Arnie even angrier. Meanwhile, at a convenience store, Buddy and his friend Don buy some drinks and drive off down the road. Halfway down the road, a car with its headlights on starts chasing them. Buddy stops the car to see who it is, but the headlights obstruct his view. He tries to lose the car by reversing, only for the vehicle to do the same, revealing it to be Christine. Annoyed, Buddy speeds his car down the road until he stops at a gas station where his friend Richie works. He then gets out of the vehicle, pulls out a piece of iron and prepares to confront whoever is following him. Suddenly, Christine appears at high speed and, without hesitation, she crashes head-on into Buddy's car, completely crumpling the side of the vehicle. The bully suspects that Arnie is inside and dares him to confront him. However, Christine again speeds towards Buddy's car, but this time she pushes it into the workshop. At that moment, Don was inside, and he was pushed along with the car and smashed against the wall. As if that wasn't enough, the wrecked car starts leaking gasoline and the fuel reaches Richie's feet. Eventually, Buddy's car starts on fire, and when it comes into contact with the gasoline, the entire garage explodes, taking Richie with it. Seeing this tragedy, Buddy flees to save himself, but Christine comes out of the garage, covered in flames, and sets off to eliminate her latest victim. In the middle of the dark and deserted road, the flaming car watches Buddy run as far as he can. Finally, the monster car runs over its victim, leaving only the body lying on the road, covered in fire. Sometime later, Old Will hears a car approaching and, when he opens the doors of his workshop, he finds Christine, covered in smoke. The old man finds this strange, as Arnie had gone with his car to do a job he had asked for. So he arms himself with a shotgun and goes to Christine to find out who is driving. The old man approaches and tries to open the door, but the whole body is extremely hot. He uses an old rag to open it, but no one is inside. This only makes everything stranger, but even so, the man decides to get into the car to investigate. Christine takes advantage of this mistake to avoid leaving any witnesses and, as well as locking the old man in the car, she smashes him by pushing the seat against the dashboard. The next day, Arnie returns to the garage and finds several police cars inside. On entering, he comes across Detective Jenkins, who tells him that he has found his boss inside the car, lifeless. The strangest thing of all is that the situation seems to indicate that he took his own life, as his gun was with him in the car. Faced with this, Arnie says he doesn't know what could have happened, but suspects that it was Christine's doing, who once again appears completely restored. Meanwhile, Dennis returns home and receives a call from Lee, who asks to speak to him. She goes there and says she suspects that the car is somehow controlling Arnie so that he acts strangely and violently. Dennis doesn't believe that his friend is capable of doing anything bad, but if the car is controlling his mind, it must be destroyed. After the conversation, Lee leaves, but seconds later, Arnie appears, along with Christine. He calls Dennis to take them for a drive, but Arnie is once again behaving very strangely. On the way, he starts drinking more than he should, exceeds the speed limit and even lets his hands off the wheel and lets the car drive itself. This attitude makes Dennis worry and he repeats Lee's words that Arnie isn't in control of his car. However, instead of listening to his friend, the young man just tells him, in a threatening tone, that nothing and no one will stand in his and Christine's way. To prove it, Arnie accelerates the car to maximum speed and swerves into another lane, almost colliding with a car coming in the opposite direction. Seeing that his friend is on the verge of madness, the next day Dennis leaves a notice on Christine's bodywork, asking Arnie to meet him at the garage in the evening. When the time comes for the meeting, Dennis and Lee are waiting for him in the workshop, but they don't find Arnie there. So the two of them get into a nearby excavator and drive it into the workshop. The two agree that Lee will stay in the office and close the gate when Arnie arrives, and as soon as he leaves, Dennis will destroy Christine with the bulldozer. They go ahead with the plan and the girl goes to the office, but what neither of them knew was that Christine was hiding in the workshop, amidst a lot of rubble. Then the car turns on its headlights and sets out to run over the girl who, in an act of reflex, grabs onto a dangling tire and dodges just in time. However, Christine doesn't give up and sets out to attack her again, only for Dennis to put the excavator's claw in front of her and protect her from the impact. After that, Christine backs off and goes to the far side of the workshop, while Dennis drives the tractor to the opposite side. The two vehicles are positioned, one against the other, and it is revealed that Christine is not driving alone, but with the help of Arnie, completely dominated by her influence. Suddenly, the car activates its headlights and, in a matter of seconds, completely repairs itself. To make matters worse, the excavator stops working and Dennis tries to restart it. In the meantime, the car speeds off towards the office to eliminate Lee once and for all. The girl despairs and the car crashes into everything, but instead of hitting her, the impact throws Arnie through the windshield. The girl goes to see what has happened to him and Arnie scares her with a jump and grabs her by surprise. Unfortunately, his body is mortally wounded by one of the pieces of glass in the windshield. Arnie, in his final moments, tries to caress his precious car, but he can't resist his injuries and perishes in front of Christine. Helpless to do anything else, Lee flees the scene, but Christine, in a last act of revenge, backs up to try and hit the girl. At the last second, Lee manages to swerve and the car gets stuck in a column. Dennis seizes this chance and, after reactivating the excavator, he drives it towards Christine. The blow hits her hard, but the car resists and tries to get away. Christine sets off in Lee's direction, only for Dennis to use the excavator's claw and pierce the vehicle from behind. With this blow, the mad car seems to lose power and becomes disabled. Lee rushes to the excavator to join Dennis, but Christine activates again and begins to rebuild once more. So, to put an end to the evil forever, Dennis starts up the bulldozer and runs over Christine, who tries to resist, but is completely crushed. The fight is finally over and the next day, Dennis and Lee meet up with Detective Jenkins in the middle of a junkyard. There, they find Christine, turned into compacted scrap metal. The danger seems to be over, except that the three of them hear a song, very similar to the ones the car used to play on the radio. Fortunately, it was just one of the junkyard workers with his stereo. Finally, the three of them leave, but they don't notice when a small piece of Christine begins to move, proving that the diabolical car is still alive. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.